guys, it's Sam, and this is my ranking of this year's Hugo nominees for the novel category. I've been so not engaged with what's going on in the book community lately, so I'm sitting here like, as of the filming of this, did those already get announced? I don't think so. I think I would have seen, even though I haven't been as engaged. I think I would have seen. Even though other things are happening in the world right now that are very important, I still think I would have seen that. Anyway, here are my thoughts and opinions on these books and how they rank. I will link my initial reaction to these and talking about my TBR for this on the screen, because I say in there, and just worth repeating here, that I think this list is fairly weak, even having read a number of them, but still had some decent books in there, just not necessarily what I would picture as award-winning quality necessarily. But here's what I thought of all of those, and I will go in the order from worst, in my opinion, to best. So first is The Spare Man by Meher Kowal, which I gave 2 stars to. This is a sci-fi mystery in which our main character's newlywed husband, is accused of murder on a ship when they are going to Mars, and she's having to clear his name. While Meher Kowal's writing is perfectly fine, and she seems to be very much a Hugo darling, so I'm not shocked that she was necessarily on this list. I had not heard about this book at all until the nominees were announced, so yeah, zero buzz, at least in my spheres, about this. And some of the world building and stuff is very much fine, but ultimately, I think as far as a sci-fi mystery, this was incredibly mediocre, and I found it to be just very slow in parts, and for a closed circle mystery, not actually a ton of suspense, in my opinion. And then the ending was so Deus Ex Machina, where it just was a very easy out to explain how everything happened in a way that was very annoying. The only reason I kept reading this was because it was for the Hugos, and because I was okay, well, I do sort of want to know. That's the whole thing with a mystery. And then you get to the end and you're really? I prefer a mystery where you could connect the dots and maybe figure it out yourself. This one you kind of can't, and I find that very annoying. So yeah, 2 out of 5 stars. Then we had The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is actually a book that we read for our House Salt Book Club pick last year when it came out, and this is essentially a retelling of the Dr. Moreau story, but told from the perspective of a daughter. It's historical, and it's a beautiful, secluded part of Mexico. And so if you don't know about the Dr. Moreau story, it's a man that's basically doing experiments that are a lot of body horror-esque stuff of combining humans and animals and things like that. So it's that sort of horror adjacent thing. I did not find this scary at all. This is definitely a very slow story, very atmospheric. All of Silvia Moreno Garcia's stories are very atmospheric. She's obviously an excellent writer, but as far as the plot and my connection to the story, not very high for me. It was just very much fine. I actually would have preferred if there were some more horror elements. I think we could have gotten deeper into the suspense of it all. For example, shortly before reading this, I had read Mexican Gothic, which is also by her, which I felt had more of that, and I would have liked that in here too. That just kind of eerie creepiness. Yeah, and this was just kind of I don't know, some of the characters felt kind of flat. There's an argument to be made that maybe that was intentional because of who our narrator is and some of the being secluded and naive and things like that, but ultimately I just think it was just very much fine, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then, possibly controversially, we have Nona the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is the 3rd book in the Locked Tomb series, and I can't obviously go into much detail about this, but if you are familiar with the series at all, it's lesbian necromancers in space, a ton of space opera-y political intrigue, just an utter mindfuck. There are tons of people online who talk about this in detail and have whole charts and graphs and things because there are so many elements and it can be very hard to understand. This one I rated lower than some of the other books on this list, and as a separation from the series, because the series for me is a 4 to 5 star series, just impeccable. But this actual installment I felt was a bit of an offshoot of what was actually going on. It felt it wasn't super connected to the main story, even though I know that it is. There's parts that felt really slow. I just wasn't as connected to it. It felt less sci-fi in a lot of ways to me than the other books in the series. And yeah, it just felt like a delay in the main story until the end when a lot of stuff starts coming together. So my overall enjoyment of this in comparison to the other 2 books in this series was just so much lower. So this is just a solid 3 for me. Do I think that the series is impeccable and the writing quality and it as a masterwork is going to be fantastic? Yes. But this one, for being a nominated work, and I think Harrow was stronger, and I think Harrow was nominated last year, but Harrow and Gideon, both I feel like were stronger installments than this one, for me personally. Then we have the Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi, which I gave 3.75 stars, maybe like a 3.5, now that I've had a little bit of time away from it. But honestly, I really enjoyed this, but again, not as like an award-winning book. This is telling the story of a man who, post-pandemic, lost his job in tech and ends up getting approached to be a part of this like Kaiju Preservation Society, which is basically preserving kaiju in an alternate Earth, like an alternate dimension. And it's just, if you like kaiju, if you like Pacific Rim, like, you're probably gonna like this. It feels very slice of life-y. I don't find the characters to be anything super memorable. It's very much like the atmosphere and like this fact that you're in just like a land of kaiju and they're studying them. And it's fun. And that's what it was supposed to be. Like, this book was not written to be anything more than fun, which is why it's like astounding that it's nominated for an award of this caliber. But yeah, it was fine, and it was very fun, and I do think about it a lot, and I do talk about it for just like its funness, but it's not doing anything like extra. There's no like extra themes to it, which is again what I was talking about when I was talking about the nominees here, is like, for a nominee of any kind of award, for me, I want there to be like, it's doing something different, or it's saying something different, or it's saying something similar that to what we've always said with certain genres, but in a different way, or like the themes are that like, this is just like kaiju are cool. And that's true. Okay. Next we have a fan favorite, Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, which I gave 4 stars to. Most people know this by now. This is a darling of like every book community, but it's basically like post D&D campaign. A woman, barbarian kind of orc character, if you're familiar with like D&D, opens a coffee shop. And it's basically like a coffee shop sim in a book in a fantasy world. It's very cute. It's very wholesome. It's very much like found family, found coworkers. It's like a little bit between that. It's there's low stakes. It's just sweet. 4 stars because I found it delightful and enjoyed it highly. There's some sapphic relationships in here. It's cute. But again, award-winning quality, I don't know. People have made the argument that this has really jump-started cozy fantasy as a genre for people. Totally get that, and maybe that's where people are wanting to like award it with something. But I think in the cozy genre, there's better than this. This is still cute and precious. So. And finally, my vote, and the only 5-star on this list, is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. Honestly, I haven't done the novellas yet because I'm waiting on one novella, but T. Kingfisher might also win for me in that category as well. This is a dark fairy tale following a woman whose sisters have been horribly abused by this prince, and she wants him to die. And so she goes on this quest to like magically solve that. And it becomes this like, again, collecting of like a found family, like a real found family. So many interesting characters, so many interesting dark story elements. It's so good. And like, it's so heartfelt and also cozy. Like, yes, there are stakes here, and yes, there's some like gruesomeness and like darkness to this, but this I feel like is like peak cozy with more substance. I loved it. Yeah, it's perfect. It's everything. I am now officially a T. Kingfisher fan and will continue to read her works. This is the only book really on this list that I feel like is truly like worthy of an award. Like, my own judgment there, and that's not me saying that other books shouldn't get awards. But when I think of award-winning material, this is definitely something that would come to mind because the writing is excellent, the plotting is excellent, the story is excellent, the characters are excellent. Like, no notes. Everything in here is perfect. So, Nettle and Bone would be my choice for the novel category for the Hugos this year. So that is it for my ranking of the Hugo novel nominees this year. Comment down below and let me know what your ranking would be, who you would pick to win this year. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.